Welcome back to Making Power, where we figure out how to code effects in the Origin's creator. Today, we will be demonstrating the ability to grant powers to other players or creatures by making a Deathtouch ability. Now, the term Deathtouch refers to the static ability found on some magic cards, which cause any amount of damage dealt to be lethal to a creature. This effect is, of course, not exclusive to this IP and finds its origins with mythological creatures like the basilisk, who have a deadly gaze. Creatures in nature bear similar traits, with the ability to inject venom with a bite or a sting. So how do we go about creating such common features? To begin, we need an effect to make all damage lethal, and since this does not exist in Minecraft by default other than the methods involving using scoreboard objectives, we will have to create our own. Next, we also have to distribute this to our targets by some means, and finally, we need this ability to recharge over time, much like the secretion glands a snake uses to rebuild their venom after it's been used. If we want all damage to be able to kill our targets, we need to create a new file, one which I will call Mortality. This will use the effect Origin's Modify Damage Taken, which, as its name appropriately suggests, can increase or decrease the damage the creature with the power takes. Open the Modifier tab and select the operation Multiply Total Multiplicative with an appropriately high value. In typical instances, damage will at minimum be half a heart to a player. As such, making the value 20 will usually be enough to satisfy these conditions. However, there's no harm in being generous, because after all you want them dead, not, as Miracle Max put it, mostly dead. Doing this will result in a power which makes any damage lethal, regardless of its source. You can, if you wish, provide a damage condition to control what damage becomes lethal. For instance, the condition type Attacker with the entity condition Entity type Minecraft:player. This would limit the lethality to only player attacks, should that interest you. I will also point out here that you can reduce the amount of damage that this does. You could make it so that affected creatures take twice as much damage. It would be more balanced and be still an interesting and useful ability. I will also put this broad disclaimer. Do not put this power in the list of powers in the Origins tab, as it will make you die to everything. You've been warned. Now let's talk about distribution. You haven't got fangs or a stinger, but we can supply you with a mean way of getting this power to others. A new file with the power Action on Entity Use will cause an effect triggered by right-clicking an entity. Use the AND function and first select Target Action. Select the AND function again, followed by first selecting Grant Power. In the box, write the name of the file you created earlier. That way, the entity you target is given the power which causes all damage to be lethal. Naturally, this effect cannot last forever, so follow this with the function delay. This can be set to any time frame you like, but the comment which inspired this video suggested 30 seconds, so I will adopt this. Remember, 20 ticks is the equivalent of 1 second, so 600 ticks. Then, for the action type, select Revoke Power, and repeat the source from above when you granted them the power. With this effect complete, you are able to right-click an entity to cause any damage to them to be lethal for 30 seconds before they return to normal, and damage returns to normal as well. A problem emerges when you realize that there is no limit to how often you are able to perform this action, so let's work on a way to limit how much you can inflict mortality on others. First, create a new file, which I'll call Cooldown for simplicity, and the fact that you will use a power in this file by the same name. You can then provide the time you wish for it to wait here. I would recommend something longer than the 5 seconds I've chosen here, as that is far too short for an instant kill effect, but this is less about being balanced than being cool, so who cares. I would also recommend selecting HUD Render to create a visual recharge for the power, which is very aesthetically pleasing. Clicking Sprite Location will bring you to a page with every sprite table available. Clicking the links to the side will show images with each of the bars as they would render in-game. When you find one you like, remember its location, coming from the second bar down starting at 1, and copying the sprite location from the list of resources. Place the sprite location here and the number of the bar where it says Index. Return to the Deathtouch file and add the actor action Trigger Cooldown, and where it says Power, provide the name of your cooldown power file. Finally, scroll up to the conditions and select the type Resource, which checks the value of a supplied power file. Use the is equal to comparison and compare to 0. This will check that the power is no longer on cooldown. Something you may wish to add is a by entity condition to the Deathtouch file. By selecting target condition and the condition living, you can ensure that this power only works on mobs or players, which are the only things this power is interested in. No harm in being precise. You could be further precise by selecting a specific entity type and doing Minecraft:player. That way it only targets them. To clarify, this series is much more focused on the practical side of powers. I tend to leave the design aspects to those who wish to develop these further for their own purposes. But in this case, I will point out how much more interesting this power can be with a few effects. First, by playing a sound for the creature you target, which will make things feel more immersive but also more threatening and sinister, especially if you find a really good sound. There's also no limit to the number of powers you can grant someone at one time, so there's a lot of opportunity there to add particles, overlays, even commands such as the /title effect. The particles could convey the story really well for an origin power like this. By having them shared by both the origin and those they touch feels like some sort of spreading infection. I'll let that mull over in your minds and hopefully inspire you. Either way, now the power's complete, and you can terrify all who oppose you. Right-clicking an entity will make all attacks lethal to it, and brand you a menace to all, who will soon learn that no one escapes death. Let's be honest, this power is completely overpowered. Is it cool? Absolutely, it's cool. It's really cool, but is it worth it? I'm not certain. But it does open some doors for you. The main takeaway I hope you found is the ability to make powers with custom cooldowns that otherwise don't have them, and more importantly, that you can grant powers temporarily to other players or entities. That opens the door to so many new options with the Origin's creator. Every effect that can be applied to you can now be made into a bane or a boon for others. But I've got to end it here before I run mad with the ideas that this creates. So let me know your thoughts, and if there are any other effects you'd like to see me create. Anyhow, I'm done here.